Who cares? The duck doesn't care. A slightly different code means you've been struck by a duck. 13,000 codes. There is government medicine.
Obamacare is working.
This is a simple, strong, good thing.
And then there's free market medicine.
My patients have my cell phone, they have my email address.
The long-term players in the medical business need to be pushed to a new way of looking at things.
But what will be the new way? Government or free market? And what happens when they conflict?
In Texas, Ron's a criminal.
Hey, Ron, are you still there?
I hope so. I need Ron to treat my dog. But will that be legal? Free market medicine. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
Parts of our healthcare delivery system do need fixing. Workers feel locked to their jobs because they get their health insurance from their job. And no one knows what anything costs. Even doctors don't know. As a result, everything costs more. Obamacare doesn't even address those problems. But it's supposed to solve all kinds of other problems.
You have turned, Mr. President, the right of every American to have access to decent health care into reality for the first time in American history.
Yippee. And Obamacare does promise to cover the uninsured and somehow to lower costs. And maybe it will. It's early yet. But I'm skeptical, and Obamacare is already creating some new problems. Let's talk to a doctor about that. Orthopedic surgeon John Barrasso. I should also say he's a U.S. Senator. So, John, what's that giant stack of paper next to you?
This is the red tape tower, John. It's over 7 feet tall, and these are just the regulations that have come out so far because of the Obama health care law. There's over 20,000 pages. You and I thought that the health care law, which was over 2,000 pages, was too long. But remember, so many times it said the Secretary of Health and Human Services will write the rules and regulations. This is just the first part of them that doctors and nurses and hospitals and patients and insurance companies all have to comply with under the president's health care law.
So that's the first part, more to come. But what about the goal? The uninsured, 40 million, 50, 20, whatever it is. It's a noble goal. Get them insurance.
Well, the president actually continued to use the word coverage instead of using the word care in the debate. Because just because you have a Medicaid card, which is the way the president seems to want to solve this, doesn't mean you can actually get care. What people wanted in health care reform was the care that they need from a doctor they choose at lower costs. But the president has failed in terms of trying to bring the cost down. Remember, he said by the end of his first term, families would see their insurance premiums drop by about $2,500 per family per year. No one has seen that. And in fact, if you go to a town hall meeting and you ask people how many of them think that they're paying more for health care under the president's health care law, all the hands go up. And then you ask them, do you think that the quality and availability of your care will be better? Nobody thinks that. Even Kathleen Sebelius finally admitted, she's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, that under the health care law there would be winners as well as losers. Well, many more people now believe they're going to be losers under the president's health care law.
And the costs are already going up. Associated Press reports claims costs are up 32%. I never quite understood how you could cover more people and have it cost less.
And the president has actually compounded the problem under the government mandates that you have to buy government-approved insurance, which isn't necessarily the insurance that you think works for you and your family in terms of what you want or need or can afford. You have to buy a very expensive level of coverage because it has to cover so many things, many of the things that aren't necessarily that are right for you or your family.
I see on the list every policy now must cover preventative care, mammograms, colonoscopy without any deductible, breastfeeding support, supplies, and counseling. So everybody has to pay for that even if you don't want it.
Everyone has to pay for government-mandated insurance, which has a whole long list of things that they have to cover. And, of course, the rates are going to go up if you have to buy a lot of things that you don't want.
All right, but what would you do about the poor? Without government, won't the poor suffer?
We need to make sure, I wanted to focus on getting actually the rates of insurance down so people could get the care they need from a doctor they choose at lower costs. But I don't think it helps anyone when the cost of care and the cost of insurance continues to go up under the president's health care law.
The other problem is that you're exempt if you run a business and you have fewer than 50 employees. So I hear businesses are saying, I'm not going to expand. I got 49 workers. That's it.
Well, the Federal Reserve is actually in its beige book last month said that one of the big drags on the economy in this country, the reason that people aren't expanding or businesses aren't expanding, people aren't being hired, is because of the uncertainty as well as the mandates in the health care law. Part of it is the number of 50 employees or fewer, so they're not hiring more people into those businesses. The other is in terms of full-time or part-time employees. We see now that one of the largest movie theater chains in the country has now said for all of their folks that are paid by the hour, they're going to be part-time workers only, which is anything less than 30 hours, because businesses aren't mandated to cover part-time workers, but they are mandated to cover the full-time workers. So you see in businesses, and we've talked to some, where they say, gee, we have an opening. Instead of hiring one full-time person, we're going to hire 2 part-time workers instead of because of the health care law. The health care law is dragging down our economy, making it harder to people to find full-time work.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. All these laws have unintended consequences.
Thank you, John.
And let's look at that big 7-foot pile again. There it is, and the Secretary shall continue to write new rules, it says in the bill, and they will grow. Okay, now let's debate. Orthopedic surgeon Lee Heeb agrees with us that what American healthcare needs is less government and more free market. Pediatrician Steve Auerbach says that's wrong, that the free market doesn't really work for medicine, so we need more government control. Steve, you say Obamacare even doesn't go far enough to protect people.
Sure. What we need is health care for all Americans, health care access for all Americans. And the way to achieve that, step number 1, would be true universal health insurance through a single-payer healthcare system.
Like Medicare Canada, Britain has.
All the Western industrialized countries, all the Western industrialized capitalist democratic countries, not just all of Western Europe, Japan, Taiwan, Germany, folks have access to go choose the doctors they want to go to, choose the hospitals and the clinics they want to go to. Under our system, what we've proposed is single-payer universal health care, H.R. 676.
You say we, you have a group pushing for a national
health program.
You say it's a moral duty.
We believe, and I think many Americans believe, maybe even most Americans believe, that health care is a human right, that it's one of those things that you live in America, you're an American, we should have an all-American health care system, an all-American health care insurance. Everybody would have insurance automatically, no more churning on and off insurance.
Dr. Heeb, this sounds awfully good to people.
It sounds good. Canada has a universal health care system. They have people waiting 2 to 3 years for a primary care doctor. Now, the problem is, in Canada, for example, you have to wait 6 to 9 months for a CAT scan. There's no place I can't get you a CAT scan in an hour in America. In fact, we just caught Mary Leahy, or however you pronounce her last name, one of the former medical executives from Canada, sneaking across the border on taxpayer dollars to come to the Mayo Clinic, which is for cash. And why is it? Because it sounds good that they have access to all this care and everything, but socialized systems do not produce the goods and services that you need to actually have quality medical care.
Let me ask you, you've heard of the Soviet Union. It didn't work out.
Well, we're not talking the Soviet Union. We're talking Germany. We're talking Taiwan. And yes, we're talking Canada. And, these anecdotes that are put out by some organizations simply don't hold up when you actually look at the statistics. In fact, there is not a net flow of folks crossing the border to the United States.
I've seen the advertisements.
And in fact, Americans had wanted to get their drugs from the Canada side because they're so much less expensive.
But that's because they freeload off of our relatively free market system.
Well, you are correct in one thing. The drug companies, for example, the same multinational drug companies, the same drug products from the same factories that are sold all over the world, are less expensive in every other of the developed capitalist democracies in the world. Half the price in Canada, a quarter of the price in New Zealand. And this whole business, if you actually go to Canada, Canadians support their system. They don't want the American system. If you look at
Dr.
their own
Heeb,
polling.
they support socialized medicine.
Well, I can't really speak to the polls, but I can tell you that it's not just anecdotes. When you have, people that are in charge of the CAT scans, people that are physicians in Canada saying, look, we cannot get our patients these studies.
What would you do about the poor and the uninsured?
I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have government health care and people weren't dying in the streets. The problem with the poor is that everything is priced out of everybody's range. It's not just about the poor. I have trouble affording health insurance. And it's because government regulations are killing us. They're making everything more expensive. They're putting hospitals out of business. Hospitals are closing right now because they cannot afford the cost of the regulation and they cannot afford the penalties of not being in compliance with the regulation. So the answer for the poor is we need to get the cost down. I was a doctor on the Mexican border for 20 years. I took care of everybody. People coming across the border that were legal and illegal. And let me tell you, before government got involved in health care, the fruit pickers, the vegetable pickers that came across the border, they paid cash for their health care and they could afford it. Their wages were enough to afford everyday health care. Now it is not. The first answer is to get the cost down by deregulating things, because it's the regulations
you
that are
say
killing
people
us.
were dying.
Well, and in fact, we agree on part of the diagnosis here. We agree that the cost, the unit cost per visit, per CAT scan, per test, per operation are too high. If you, everybody's
the weather
familiar
is
now
too
with
bad,
Steve
and I'm
Brill.
too old.
Well, no, but the costs are much higher in the United States than they are in these other countries. In fact,
Because
all
they
these
freeload off us.
No, all these other countries that have the universal health insurance, the system has lower costs, lower overhead. Free market works for many things. Supply and demand works for many things.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for healthcare. Healthcare economics actually is different.
Why not?
We always talk about patient-centered healthcare. Patients can control costs. Free markets control costs when patients choose cost and value. The only way
that means the
government
patient
cuts
spends
costs,
her own
But
money.
when you get sick, you're
Right.
not going around checking the prices of Dr. A or
wait a
Dr. B.
You don't need to.
Well,
That's
actually,
the way
you're
free
not
market.
able to.
Hang on a sec. The way free markets work is you don't have to make the decision when you get sick. When your car breaks down, you know which is the good mechanic. Word gets out about which are the good doctors or hospitals. Everybody says, healthcare is special, but every field is special and different, and the market works.
It sounds nice,
And
but in
you
fact,
buy
it's a
real
fantasy, and it's
insurance.
not how healthcare works. And in fact, what's funny here is, folks think I'm the pie in the sky dreamer, thinking that we should have universal health care for all, and that's the moral right thing to do, and it can be done. It turns out that's also how the healthcare economics works and how the healthcare systems work. And you know where we know this from, among other places recently, is Taiwan. Taiwan, a capitalist country, went from private insurance. They realized it was hurting their people and it was bad for their business, and they went to universal single payer a few years ago.
Well, it took the Soviet Union 70 years to break down.
We're not talking
socialist system.
We're not talking communist or dictatorships. You may
You're
want to
calling
talk about
central
them.
planning.
Nope.
It's the same thing.
No, it
I'm
isn't.
sorry. Dr. Heeb, you get the last word.
Well, I mean, look at the cancer death rate in Europe versus America. We do much better. Our outcomes are much better.
Much worse.
And why is that? Actually, that's not true.
Systematic comparisons by the OECD, by WHO.
Thank you, doctors Auerbach and Heeb. We're out of time. Coming up, big government now even gets in the way of me getting answers to questions about my dog. Really? But first, a new government rule that will make you feel sorry for your doctor. Does your doctor spend his time treating people like you or filling out forms? Today's doctors complain they spend much too much of their time just doing paperwork, not healing people, just handling insurance. And that's a terrible waste. And it's about to get much worse, says Congressman Ted Poe. So, Congressman, what do you mean?
What's going to occur now? The federal government has imposed new regulations, which means new codes for doctors to fill out when a patient comes to see them. Right now, there are about 13,000 codes that they have to check. That's the book you have there.
13,000 codes here.
To define exactly what happened to the patient and why they're there. The federal government.
So they can be reimbursed.
So they'll be reimbursed by Medicare and Medicaid.
And why so many?
Well, the federal government thinks there needs to be more because there's going to be now 140,000 of these codes for doctors to fill out, and they're very specific.
140,000.
Going from 13,000 to 140,000.
It's already horrible, tiny, fine print here.
And none of these codes help make a patient better or healthier. They're very expensive. Average, let's say a sole practitioner doctor, will cost the doctor $80,000 to implement the new federal code procedure. If you have a bigger practice, let's say there's 5 to 10 doctors, it's about $250,000 for the doctor to implement the federal government codes so that when patient comes in, the doctor can't check bitten by a dog anymore. You have to check bitten by a Dalmatian, a Doberman, a Pit Bull, a Chihuahua. You have to be very specific. If you mess up, if you make a mistake, or you do it on purpose, then you're in violation of federal law. You won't get reimbursed. You could be fined. So that's what the doctors have to look forward to.
And already under the existing codes, you have a code for if you're bitten by a duck. A slightly different code means you've been struck by a duck. Who cares?
Who cares? The duck doesn't care, and neither should the patient or the doctor. You want to treat the injury. That's the biggest concern.
Injured in a chicken coop, it's a code for that. Fall at an art gallery. And we asked Health and Human Services why so many, and they didn't get back to us.
Not surprising.
But from what I read, they say this will help them plan for the future. And you ship information to another doctor, he knows if you walked into a pole or if you're a repeat pole walker into, and that might make a difference in how he treats you.
Maybe, maybe not. Does the federal government need to put all this detail in to just keep records at this great expense? And I don't believe they do.
It is unbelievable. This is the old book again, and the new one will be 5 or almost 10 times as big. That they're not just stupid. They must have a reason for doing it. They don't want to just build empires, do they?
Well, they are regulators. And we have to understand that when regulators go to work every day, and they meet around, and I think these big oak tables and drink their lattes, they decide, who shall we regulate today? Why don't we regulate the medical industry a little more and make doctors and hospitals fill out these very specific codes that don't treat a patient but give us information about the patient? And that's what they do. Regulators regulate. That's what the law allows them to do.
Doctors are just meekly following these rules, right?
Yes, they are.
Doctors obey. You have to obey if you want to get paid.
If you want to get reimbursed or get paid or not be in violation of federal law, rather than expanding a practice and hiring a nurse or an associate or someone else on the medical staff, you hire someone to keep statistics for you so you can turn those into the federal government. And the federal government even shows online where you can take courses to know how to implement the new codes.
And give us some other examples. 9 different codes for being injured by a turkey?
That is correct. Whether you run into a turkey or the turkey runs into you, you're pecked by a turkey, or you're bitten by a turkey, there's a difference between being pecked and being bitten. So they have 9 codes for turkeys. They have about 5 codes for basketball. You hit by a basketball? Are you a second offender or third offender being hit by a basketball? Or do you have I don't know what the medical term is, a condition where you're always being hit by a basketball? So doctors have to figure this out and check that right. Put the number in, the 10-digit number, and check that number to make sure that they have.
Yeah, the codes are even long. W6161XA. They don't memorize this stuff.
No, they have a code book. They're going to get one a lot bigger than that one. So they have to look it up in the code book. Under what? I don't know. Do you look under turkey, or do you look under what you run into, or basketball?
What would you have them do? You're king of all Congress.
I think what the regulators and regulations need to make some sense. So what is the purpose? What is the goal? Of course, doctors need to be accurate in their diagnosis, but do they need to go through this much detail to get information to the federal government? I don't think they do.
And just to be clear, this is not part of Obamacare. This was HIPAA passed under Bush. It's being enforced. The rules are being increased under Obamacare. But this is why we patients also have to fill out more forms when we go to the doctor.
That is correct. This is not a new thing. Just the new code. Code 10 is the new one. So we've had nine revisions, expansions of this initial law. This is the 10th expansion, 10th code book. But maybe it has gone a little too far in treating the American sick patient by the doctor filling out the form.
The bureaucrats always want more. So thank you, Congressman Pohl, for bringing this to my attention. Coming up, doctors who don't hide the cost of health care behind government codes. And the result is cheaper medicine and happier patients and happier doctors, too. That's next. Although government and bureaucratic insurance companies dominate American health care, there are still a couple tiny areas where the free market rules because the patient pays directly. Our special correspondent Kennedy visited a cosmetic dermatologist and a LASIK eye surgeon.
Right to the left. Right. We have to provide excellent quality service to be competitive because our patients who are self-paying in the free market, they don't want to wait an hour to see your doctor.
What are the benefits for not having to go through insurance companies?
Enormous amount of paperwork that's required before and after. We don't have whole departments dedicated to insurance companies.
Since he competes against other LASIK surgeons for patients, he needs to have the best equipment.
The patients are quite savvy, so if it's not the advanced femtosecond laser, they're going to leave. It's a Google away to see what the best is.
Technology is new. When I graduated from residency, we had one laser, one filler, Botox wasn't even approved. This is just in the last 15 years that we have all these products.
This is a cosmetic dermatologist. She must have the latest equipment to attract and maintain customers.
I happen to have 14 different lasers. I've bought them all. There's new resurfacing lasers and tightening lasers.
And to keep patients, both of these doctors are very accessible.
Do you give your cell phone number to patients?
My patients have my cell phone, they have my email address, and I try to be accessible at all times.
We have office hours Saturdays. We operate till 7 p.m. We have a doctor available 24/7. We have to be great to be competitive.
It sounds nice. Most of you, I bet, don't have such good care or they don't make themselves available that many hours.
When's the last time you high-fived your doctor? Seriously. How many people go around doing that?
All right, but this is LASIK eye surgery, cosmetic surgery, elective stuff, mostly for wealthier people. This doesn't take care of the big stuff.
No, this is elective stuff that works, and people find a way to pay for it. And I have to tell you, like, this free market system, this model, I wish it were applied to other areas of medicine, because the doctors have to be invested in their customers, and their customers show their appreciation by going back continuously.
But heart surgery isn't elective. How can the market work?
You find the best heart surgeon. You look for customer reviews. You look at someone's academic history.
How do you pay for it?
Well, I mean, you have insurance. You're supposed to have insurance for catastrophes like heart surgery. That's what insurance was designed for. It wasn't designed to pay for 80% of every single minor medical kerfuffle you might stumble upon throughout the year. It's really supposed to be for those life-saving things. In fact, I asked Dr. Day, because I spent a year without health insurance because I have celiac disease and couldn't get it. The system is not perfect, trust me, but when I didn't have insurance, I had to go to my doctors and say, all right, what will you charge me since I'm outside the system? And we worked together. She said her father was
the doctor gave you a discount.
Dr. Day said her father, who was a physician, taught her, people who can pay for it, they'll pay in full. People who can only pay a little bit, they'll pay a little bit. Some people can't pay, you help them out. She said she would have negotiated a rate with me outside of insurance.
And in this little area of free market medicine, what's happened to the prices is interesting. The quality of LASIK surgery keeps improving, and the prices have come down 25%.
And the technology keeps improving because customers demand it. And when you have that sort of influence from what people really want, it's going to make the service better. Cosmetic services, they've only gone up by 23%. Inflation by 59%. Medical services have gone up by 108% when compared with one another.
Free market works wonders. So thank you, Kennedy. So the market will take care of elective procedures like LASIK eye surgery, but what about the important stuff? Heart surgery. Can we bring free market benefits back to that? Yes, we can. And when we return, I'll show you an Oklahoma surgery center where that's happened, and prices are much lower. You want to escape America's government-dominated health care and save money? It's not hard. Just leave the country. Go to the Philippines.
It's not just their brilliance that makes Filipino doctors popular, it's how well they treat their patients.
Go to Colombia and get pampered.
I will send a chauffeur to the airport, and he will take you to the hotel where a welcome package and a mobile phone will be waiting for you. Once we take care of the medical part, we can pamper you.
Go to China.
Shanghai is also an outstanding destination for affordable, high-quality healthcare services.
Coming to China for my operation was the best decision I could have made.
This is called medical tourism, and in many places you can get medical treatment for much less than it costs in America. And Americans go. Last year, more than 1 million left the country to get cheaper treatment. But why do they have to leave the country? Can't we find something similar in America? Yes, we can, says Dr. Keith Smith, because he's founded a surgery center in Oklahoma that charges much less. So how?
We own our facility as physicians, and so we, by virtue of that arrangement, have cut out the most inefficient and greedy profit seeker from the equation, and that's the not-for-profit hospital, to be honest.
And for the most part, your customers, your patients, pay themselves or are insured by a company that self-insures. It makes for a different relationship?
Yes, we put our prices online, and the first patients that showed up... Post them online, and the first patients that showed up, interestingly, were the Canadians. But the patients that come to us now, our fastest growing part of our business, are employees for whom the employers pay for their care directly out of operating expenses.
And the Reason TV really recently posted a video clip about your surgery center. Let's watch a bit.
June Wiskoski is about to undergo a simple procedure to relieve her carpal tunnel syndrome.
Are you nervous?
A little bit. I think I'm more nervous about being put to sleep.
What makes this routine surgery so unusual is that the total price, which comes to $2,750, is posted online.
We decided we would have price honesty.
Why don't we have that in healthcare?
Because there are a lot of people that benefit from dishonesty in pricing. We put our prices online with the hope that we would attract more patients and more business, but also hoping to start a price war, a real deflationary price war that could bring prices to a level that people would reevaluate their need for insurance altogether, and certainly reevaluate the role of government in healthcare.
And the price differences are enormous. Let's play another clip from that Reason video.
The surgeon was Dr. Jason Sigmund, who also does the procedure at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, where the total price is $5,885. The bill from Integris comes to more than $33,000. Dr. Jason Sigmund regularly performs procedures at both the Surgery Center and at Integris Baptist Medical Center, which is the epitome of a traditional hospital. Sigmund says the Surgery Center is so much more efficient than Integris that he can perform twice as many surgeries there in a single day.
We have pressures to do that because the amount that we get reimbursed for the same case that they do at the hospital is such a fraction that we're really forced to be efficient.
And Integris is the big local hospital there, and these surgeons who you employ, they work for you and for the hospital.
They don't work for me. They're independent physicians.
Right, but they do surgery at
yes, at both places.
And $5,000 versus $30,000?
Yes. And the insurance companies, a lot of them drive them to the larger facilities where it's more expensive. And that was one of the things that drove us to put our prices online, was to expose that problem.
And the result is that some people, because they have a deductible, they come to you, they pay it out of their own pocket and still come out ahead?
Yes, people that have high deductible plans, health savings accounts, like I said before, people that are part of self-funded plans, they have the sticker shock, so they're shopping. They're true consumers in the market.
But insurance seems free, and I'm on Medicare. They don't even ask me what things cost. If she has to pay $3,000, how does she come out ahead?
She came out ahead, this patient did, because her employer paid for the whole thing. Otherwise, the hospital would charge them 6, 8, 10 times that. So the employee didn't have any out-of-pocket.
The employer was so happy that it was cheaper, they
said,
we'll
pay
just
the whole thing.
Forget the deductible.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons there's less competition is in most states, there's this law called the CON law.
Certificate of Need.
Which means that if you're going to build a hospital, you have to prove to the bureaucrats that it's needed.
It's not just hospitals, it's surgery centers, MRI units, you name it. And so it's old-fashioned protectionism. It's old-fashioned crony capitalism.
One result of your posting your prices is that the hospital, too, has started coming down in price.
Well, I get between 5 and 7 emails every week from patients that said, we were going to come to your facility from Florida, but our local hospital surrendered to your pricing. So we're saving people money all over the country, and we're not even doing the surgeries many times.
And just by saying we're here.
Right.
But you're growing. You've got 47 surgeons, and you may soon have more?
But I think we will. We're expanding our facility. We're going to add 2 more operating rooms, so we'll be able to do a lot more surgery than we're doing now. And I think the way things are going, that's going to be needed.
Thank you, Dr. Keith Smith. Next, the battle between government and the free market. How will this affect me and my dog? This is my dog, Luca. He's got some medical and psychological issues that I'd like to consult a veterinarian about, but what if I don't want to go to the vet? What if I don't live near a vet? Can I consult one on the internet? Maybe someone like Ron Hines.
Ron's a 69-year-old Texas-licensed veterinarian with a Ph.D. in biology. He's been on the internet for 10 years, helping pet owners across the country and around the world. Some don't have access to a veterinarian.
That was a video from the Institute for Justice, and I'm glad I learned about Ron. I'm going to go on this computer, ask some questions via email, get some answers. But wait, I can't. Dr. Hines isn't answering questions anymore. Well, why not? Well, let's ask him. He joins us via Skype, that's why the headphones, from Texas. His volunteer lawyer from the Institute for Justice, Jeff Rose, is in the studio. So, Dr. Hines, why'd you stop giving online advice?
I had to, John. I got a letter almost exactly a year ago that what I was doing was criminal and to please stop immediately. So I did.
Letter from whom?
From the state of Texas.
So let's go to your volunteer lawyer. He's with the Institute for Justice, and they defend people like Ron. So what's this about?
This is about the fact that a veterinarian should be able to give advice, and that shouldn't be illegal. It's a collision between the First Amendment right to free speech and the government's power to regulate occupations.
I would think everybody should give advice, but what law do they say he's violating?
Well, Texas says that a vet can't give vet advice unless the vet has examined the animal in person at least once, which for Ron is impossible because he works via the internet and the animals he helps are scattered all over the world.
And Ron, you do this because you used to have an active veterinary practice, but now you have some back problems, and so you wanted to do it by telephone or internet.
Yes, John, it seemed like an excellent way for me to continue with doing the work I love. I can't do it physically, but there's nothing to keep me from a keyboard.
So for 10 years, you emailed people, answered their questions before you got this letter?
Yes.
Any complaints about you?
Not to my knowledge.
Any complaints about him?
No. Not at all.
There's not even an allegation by the Texas State Board that he harmed any animals. 38 states have this law that a dog can be in the parking lot, but you don't even have to touch the dog, but it has to be there.
It has to be an in-person examination. Now, what's the point of this? Well, let's look at it. In 2005, Texas adopted this law, and it adopted it verbatim from the American Veterinary Medical Association, which in 2003 decided, oh, there's some crisis in people giving out information and advice about pets. Well, what's the crisis? The internet made it possible to get information cheaply, better, faster, and from anybody anywhere in the world. That's a crisis for veterinarians. That's not a crisis for pet owners. And so they pass a law to make it illegal.
Ron, you agree they're trying to put you out of business?
I believe so, John.
I guess they have put you out of business. How'd you make money?
I never made much money. I do this for love. I live on Social Security. I have very minimal needs.
But you charge some people a flat fee to have a lot of email contact with them?
I do. Some people I charge. Most I don't.
$50?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll spend the $50. Luca here, he eats mud in the park. Does that mean anything? He has early stage kidney disease.
Well, the mud is a different issue. We could deal with that separately, but the kidneys are more important. And
he's on a special diet for that. That's all I am willing to do.
Well, people send me their pet's blood work. I look over it. I look over x-rays, and I try to use the experience of 50 years to just let them know what their options might be. I don't cure animals over the internet, but I try to tell them what I would do if it were my dog.
Well, what would you do if your dog ate mud?
Well, I'd be sure that it was clean mud.
Well, it's Central Park. I have no control over that. He's running around. He's off leash. I like that. He eats. I call him. He doesn't come then. He likes the mud more than me.
Well, I don't think the mud's going to hurt him. Keep him on a monthly worm and heartworm preventative, and he's going to be just fine.
That's good news. You wanted to make a point, Jeff.
Well, the point I wanted to make is that Ron's exercise of free speech here is dangerously criminal, and as his lawyer, I almost feel like telling him to stop. But at the Institute for Justice, we're about defending free speech, and that's what we're going to do for Ron all the way to the Supreme Court, if that's what it takes.
Thank you, Jeff and Ron. Coming up, how the American government began to wreck health care while at the same time funneled money to me and my dad. That's next. Why don't we have free market health care in America? Is health care different from other consumer services? I say no. All markets are different, special. America's free market health care really began to die during World War II when our government imposed wage and price controls. At first, companies said, great, stability. We don't have to worry about price competition and workers asking for raises. But then they realized that they had less flexibility and they couldn't attract better workers by offering them more pay. So companies got around the rules, as companies usually do. Instead of raises, employers gave benefits like health insurance. Government distorted the market further by giving employer-based health insurance better tax treatment than coverage you might buy yourself. And one odd sidebar to this story, my father at the time was a poor immigrant who supported himself selling towels to Sears Roebuck. Sears was frustrated because they couldn't raise their prices. But government said companies, if they added value to a product, then they could. So Dad came up with the idea of name towels, towels with your name on them. Sears could sell those for more. And so we got name towels, and I got this house that I grew up in because of government price controls. Unfortunately, America also got stuck with employer-based health insurance, which is nuts. Getting insurance at work is especially dumb today when Americans change jobs all the time. Employer-based health insurance killed some of the healthcare market. And now Obamacare and Medicare may kill the rest. Maybe we'll be like Canada, where people sometimes wait for years for treatment. Although I should say, all of Canadian healthcare is not long lines. There's one place where they do offer easy access to cutting-edge, life-saving technology.
CT scan, endoscopy, thoracoscopy, laparoscopy, arthroscopic procedures to evaluate joints for cartilage abnormality.
Available all the time.
24 hours, 7 days a week.
Patients rarely wait.
If I see a patient that's torn a cruciate ligament in that patient's knee, we can generally have that patient scheduled within probably a week.
But you have to bark or meow to get this kind of treatment. Want a CT scan in Canada? Vet clinics said they could get a dog in the next day. For people, the waiting list is a month.
Many clients will come here with their pets, and as they're leaving, it's when next time I get sick, I want to come here. I don't want to go to the regular hospital.
Hear that, Luca? The market, at least, works for you. And even for you humans, I noticed that when there's a lot at stake, people do find ways of escaping government controls. In Canada, patients and doctors began to see the problems with government care. Private alternatives then emerged. The first independent clinic opened in 1993. Now one company alone, Centric Health, operates about 1,000 private for-profit clinics. When competition's allowed, the free market will win, and then consumers win. That's our show. I'm John Stossel. See you next week.